Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're looking at the 2026 US Senate elections map, and we're going to be doing an interesting video here. On the other page I have up the Kalshi odds on the Senate map, including their own little ranker here, which is how they rate it, where anything from 90% and above is considered very likely or basically safe on the maps that we're more accustomed to. 90 down to 75 would be considered likely, 75 to 60 would be considered lean, and 60 to 50 or so would be, or really from 60 to 60 going the other way, would be considered to be a toss-up. So what I'm going to do is apply the current updated Kalshi rankings to this map, because that's always a conversation around election time, is what's more reliable, the polls or the prediction markets. So I'm going to use this current map now, and I'm going to apply the state numbers to each respective state on the Senate map and see ultimately where it comes up to and where it may even compare to some of the personal rankings we have on the Senate map. So first things first, we're going to go west to east across the United States. We're going to start with the Senate race in the state of Oregon. Oregon's obviously a very typical Democratic state, and very much we'll be expecting it to be Democratic once again. As for the Senate race this time around, we can look here. This is going to be Democratic U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley. He's running again on the Democratic side. A lot of Republican candidates are running in this race. Dave Smith and Joe Ray Perkins seem to be the most prominent ones in this state, or in this race. We'll have to wait and see how it all goes. The rankings for the predictions have it listed as solid for the Democrats. On the Kalshi map here, they have it as 95% for the Democrats, which again is above that 90 ranking. 2% for the Republicans, listed as safe for the Democrats. So Oregon is in line with where we'd expect it to be. Next, we can go to the state of Idaho. Idaho, I think, are also going to see a very similar result here. This is the Republican incumbent Senator Jim Risch, and he is running on the Republican side again. 3 Democrats are running in this race. As for the general election predictions, solid Republican across the board. Some hypothetical polling shows a 14-point race from public policy polling against Todd Achilles, the independent candidate that is officially running in the state. He is a former Democrat representative. In terms of the rankings on this one, it's listed 93% Republican as well. That would fall under the safe rating as well. So we can put Idaho into the safe Republican ranking. Montana, this may be the first state that may not be safe that we could look at so far. Possible it will be, possible it wouldn't be. We'll have to wait and see what the numbers say here. But Montana is going to be interesting. Republican Senator Steve Daines is officially not running for re-election. It's now an open race, but his hand-picked chosen successor, Kurt Alme, is running as the Republican candidate and will be the Republican candidate in the general. On the Democratic side, several Democrats are running. Former state representative Riley Neal is the most prominent Democratic candidate, but what makes this race very interesting is the independent candidate Seth Bodnar, the former president of the University of Montana. He gives the Democrats, I would say, a better chance at winning this race. It's listed as likely Republican from most of the prediction rankings, solid Republican from Cook Political Report. For the hypothetical polling for when Steve Daines was in the race, Daines versus Neal versus Bodnar seemed like a pretty reliably red race when they were all splitting the vote. Daines versus Neal was a safe race as well. Daines versus Bodnar, however, was likely in that matchup. So we're going to have to wait and see how it looks like for Kurt Alme versus Bodnar and versus Riley Neal, but that's where things were on that aspect before Daines dropped out. On the Kalshi odds side of things, it's listed at 78% Republican, which is actually just above the threshold of lean and likely. It's 75%, so it is a likely Republican state based on these ratings. So interesting, Montana goes as like a Republican. So far, the map's going really how we expect it to. Wyoming here, this is going to be a pretty quick one as well, I imagine. Wyoming's a very safe red state. The Republican incumbent is not running for re-election, but U.S. Representative Harriet Hagman already has the endorsement of President Trump. On the Democratic side, Democrat James Byrd is in the race, solid Republican from all the prediction rankings. For the Kalshi odds, it's also listed 93% as very likely or safe for the Republican, so we can put Wyoming as safe red. Next, we can go to the state of South Dakota. South Dakota in this Senate race here, pull up the Wikipedia page. This is going to be Republican incumbent U.S. Senator Mike Rounds, running again for re-election. Democratic nominee Julian Baudouin and independent candidate Brian Bangs are in this race as well. In terms of the polling and predictions, it's solid Republican. The polls for Rounds versus Bodin is roughly a 22-point lead. For Rounds versus Brian Banks on behalf of public policy polling from back in November, it showed to be roughly about a 13-point lead, which would be actually a likely Democratic or likely Republican lead, not a safe one. So that's kind of interesting. As for South Dakota, though, it's listed at 90% Republican, so right on the edge between being very likely and likely. Here they give the advantage to the safe Republicans, so it goes as safe R on the map, but sort of right on that borderline there. Pretty interesting. Next, we're going to go to the Senate race in the state of Nebraska. Nebraska obviously has a very important Senate race here with the Republican incumbent Pete Ricketts and independent candidate Dan Osborne. Now, the Democratic nominee did end up being Cindy Burbank. As for the general election, I believe that Ricketts, Burbank, and Osborne are all still in the race, though there has been speculation Burbank may drop out and give Dan Osborne a clear chance at running head-to-head versus Pete Ricketts. We'll have to wait and see ultimately how it all goes, but Ricketts versus Osborne is going to be the main race here, and the polling has shown it to be a relatively pretty competitive race. The most recent poll from the Democratic Tavern Research from the beginning of May, so not too long ago, shows Osborne leading 47-42. In terms of the prediction rankings here on this one, likely Republican from most, lean Republican from race to the White House. As for the Kalshi odds, it falls under 64%, which is in between the lean and likely rating on here, but it is in the lean, 1675. So we can actually put Nebraska on the map as a lean Republican state according to the Kalshi odds on this one. Certainly, definitely would say that one makes a lot of sense in Nebraska. Next, we're going to go to neighboring Colorado, or Colorado, this is going to be probably more on the safe side in terms of competitiveness. This is going to be Democratic U.S. Senator John Hickenlooper. He is facing a primary challenge from State Senator Julie Gonzalez, but he should win that no problem. The Republican side, State Senator Mark Baisley will be the Republican nominee. As for the general, solid Democrat across the board. The Kalshi odds are in lockstep here at 92% safe for the Democrats. Not really any surprises here. Colorado goes safe for the Democrats. Next, we can go to the neighboring state of New Mexico. New Mexico is going to be interesting to see as well, as there's technically no Republican candidate in this race. The Democrat U.S. Senator Ben Ray Lujan will be the candidate again. On the Democratic side, the Republicans, the only declared candidate is Larry Marker, a write-in candidate, after no Republican officially made the ballot once Christopher Hoovel was the only Republican to file for the race and was disqualified. So for the general election, it's listed as solid Democratic. As for the odds, it's 94% for the Democrats, a safe Democratic ranking. So again, no surprise here, safe for the Democrats. So far, things are going pretty much exactly as expected on the map based on how the predictions would go and how Kalshi would have it. So far, pretty much in lockstep. It's going to be interesting to see how we get to more of the battleground states like the next state, the state of Alaska. Alaska is an interesting state. This is going to be Republican U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan. He is running again. He'll be the candidate once again. He's facing a very tough fight from former U.S. Representative Mary Peltola in this race. As for the general election, it's listed by Lean R, Lean Republican, for most of the prediction political websites. But from the aggregate of the polling data from race to the White House, Mary Peltola is currently leading by roughly 4.9%, including the most recent poll from the middle of April from Alaska Survey Research, which shows it roughly about a 6-point lead for Peltola. So I'm very curious to see how Kalshi has this one rated in this race. Alaska, it is in the toss-up category. So just to be clear, we could on the map leave it in toss-up, but that's not fun. We're going to go with the actual rankings say. And in their toss-up, they have the Democrat at 58%, Republican at 40%. So toss-up, we're going to utilize the tilt margin here for this one. We're going to have lean will be lean as always, but tilt is going to be the battleground one, or the toss-up one. And it has Alaska technically as tilt for Mary Peltola for the Democrats based on this toss-up rating. So it's very interesting to see Alaska and Peltola as tilt for the Democrats. Next, we can go to the state of Kansas. Kansas, this is going to be Republican U.S. Senator Roger Marshall. He'll be facing off against a number of Democratic candidates in the race. The most notable at this current point in time is Adam Hamilton, a pastor who was considering an independent run. Also, since the last time I've done an update in this race, U.S. Representative Sherry Davids officially said she'll not be running in this race, so that is very significant. Adam Hamilton being in the race As for the general election, solid Republican from most of the rankings, likely Republican from race to the White House. The polling average for Hamilton, or the only poll from back in January, Marshall versus Hamilton, was about an 8-point lead for Roger Marshall on that one. As for the Kalshi odds, it's actually listed as likely Republican, not safe Republican in this race at 76%, so right above the lean to likely margin in that one. So with Adam Hamilton being in the race, certainly seems to make this race more competitive based on the Kalshi odds. So Kansas goes as likely for the Republicans. Next, we can go to the neighboring state of Oklahoma. Oklahoma, this one should not be really too competitive, I would imagine. This is the Republican Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, who's now serving in President Trump's administration. 4 Republicans are running in this race. U.S. Representative Kevin Hern, in all likelihood, will be the candidate in the race after he has the endorsement of President Trump and several U.S. senators as well. On the Democratic side, there are multiple Democratic candidates running. Irvin Yen is the most well-known based on the Wikipedia numbers here. Jim Priest has raised the most amount of money, though. As for the general election, solid Republican across the board. The Kalshi odds have it 95% Republican. No surprise here. This race goes as safe for the Republicans. Now we have a very interesting one, the Senate race in the state of Texas. Texas, if you've been following this one or been following my channel, you'll know the videos I've made on this. We have the runoff election, which as of the time I'm recording this video, I still do not know who has won the runoff, so it depends on when you're watching this video. But we know the Democratic candidate is going to be James Talarico. On the Republican side, it's going to either be Ken Paxton or John Cornyn, the incumbent U.S. Senator. So we still have to wait and see how that runoff shakes out in this race. As for the general election, it's split here. Likely Republican from 3 out of the 5 rankings, toss up from the other 2. So it's a very interesting race on that aspect. The polling averages, it's been very close for Cornyn versus James Talarico. James Talarico overall has a lead of roughly about 2.2% across all the averages here. For Paxton versus James Talarico, it doesn't have the aggregate, but James Talarico is leading over most of the recent polls, including tied in the most recent poll from Texas Southern University. So very interested to see what they have on this one. Texas is in the toss-up category, but the Republicans are slightly favored at 53%. Democrat James Talarico is at 46%. So also going to be in the tilt column, but the Republicans are slightly favored in the state of Texas. Definitely very, very interesting here. Next, we can look at the state of Louisiana. Louisiana just held their primary not too long ago, and we do know that the Republican U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy will officially not be in the runoff election, where Congresswoman Julia Letlau and Republican John Fleming ended up advancing to the runoff. We'll have to wait and see who ends up winning this. I imagine Julia Letlau will probably do that. On the Democratic side, 2 candidates, Gary Crockett and Jamie Davis, have advanced to their own runoff. As for the general, though, solid Republican from most other rankings in this race. It's listed as likely Republican, actually 87% on the rankings here. Not really agree with this one too much. Louisiana is typically a very red state, but it goes as likely Republican on the Kalshi map. Next, we can go to the state of Arkansas. I want to go through the safe states a little bit quicker just because it's going to go on for a while, but Arkansas, U.S. Senator Tom Cotton. Democratic side, Haley Shoffney will be the Democratic candidate. General election, solid Republican across the board, solid Republican lead in the one poll, and Kalshi odds have it as safe Republican as well, 94% for the GOP on that one. No surprise, Arkansas goes safe for the Republicans. Next, we're going to go to the state of Iowa. Iowa should be a very interesting one as well. This is Republican incumbent Senator Joni Ernst, who is not running for another term. On the Republican side, Representative Ashley Hinson is going to be the Republican candidate. On the Democratic side, State Representative Josh Turek and State Senator Zach Walz are fighting out their primary. We'll have to wait and see who ends up winning that one. On the general election side, the polling or predictions have it likely Republican from 3 out of the 4, tilt Republican from race to the White House. The most recent poll for Josh Turek versus Hinson was a 1-point lead for Josh Turek. The first poll for Hinson versus Walz was a 2-point lead for Zach Walz in that one. So it's going to be interesting to see how they have these rankings as well. It is listed as lean for the Republicans at 60% in the Republican exactly. So right in between toss-up and lean here. But the Republicans are favored to win the Senate race in Iowa by a lean margin according to the Kalshi odds there. Next, we're going to go to the state of Minnesota, just above it. Minnesota, this is Tina Smith's Democratic Senate seat, she is not running for re-election. 2 Democrats are running, in Peggy Flanagan and Angie Craig, and that primary still needs to sort itself out. On the Republican side, several candidates are in this race. Michelle Tafoya and Royce White are the 2 most notable Republicans in this one. I would expect Michelle Tafoya to ultimately end up winning this primary, probably by a pretty handy amount. As for the rankings, it's listed likely Democratic across the board. 2 polls, including one from Emerson College from February, shows the Democrats leading both by likely margins. And this one is actually listed as safe Democratic on the Kalshi odds at 91%. So just in between safe and likely, but it does fall under safe Democratic. That is interesting considering most of the rankings that I have for these for the state of Minnesota usually would be likely Democrat. But again, these are the Kalshi rankings and they have it as safe for the Democrats. Next, we can go to the state of Illinois. Illinois, this one should definitely not take too long here. This is a safe Democratic seat. It's open, but we already know who the candidates are going to be. Juliana Stratton and Don Tracy. We covered the live stream primary on this one. Solid Democrat nearly across the board, except for The Economist. It's listed as safe Republican on the Kalshi odds map as well, so we can officially put Illinois into the safe Democratic category. Next, we're going to go to the South. We're going to go to Mississippi. Mississippi, this is going to be Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith. Now, this one could be interesting as she's had some past elections that have been relatively competitive, especially for the state of Mississippi. She'll be facing off against the Democrat Scott Collum. And for the general, it is listed as solid Republican or safe Republican from all the rankings. But the last poll from Impact Research, a Democratic poll sponsored by a group that opposes Cindy Hyde-Smith, showed it only a 3-point lead for Hyde-Smith in this race. So interesting to see how this goes. Kalshi has it listed as likely Republican and an 85% chance to go red. So it is interesting. Mississippi, it's in sort of a similar category that in my own rankings now I've updated it to having it as likely red as well. But it is interesting to see how that's going to go. Next, we have the neighboring state of Alabama. This is Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville, who's not running for re-election. Now, I am recording this video just about a day before the Tuesday, so I'm recording this on Monday the 18th. So the night before the primary in Alabama, it's looking like it's going to head off to a runoff between Barry Moore, Steve Marshall, or Jared Hudson. They do seem to be the leading 3 candidates in this race, and the polling seems to reflect that thus far. We're going to have to wait and see ultimately how it all goes. In terms of the endorsements in this race, President Trump has endorsed Barry Moore in this race, as well as the Vice President J.D. Vance. But we'll have to wait and see, obviously, how these candidates shake out. On the Democratic side, 4 Democrats are running, including Kyle Sweetser as well. But we'll have to wait and see how it ultimately all goes on this side as well. As for the general, it's safe Republican for most of the rankings here. On the Kalshi side of things, it's listed 93% safe R as well. So we can officially put Alabama as safe for the Republicans. Next, we're going to go to the state of Tennessee, just above Alabama, obviously. Tennessee, I do believe this is going to be Republican U.S. Senator Bill Hagerty. He's the presumptive Republican nominee. On the Democratic side, 4 Democrats are running. Marquita Bradshaw is probably going to be the Democratic candidate. It's solid Republican from all the rankings, and it is solid Republican, safe Republican on the Kalshi odds as well. No surprise, Tennessee goes safe R. Next, we can look at the state of Kentucky as well. So again, I'm recording this on the Monday before the Tuesday election, so we don't know whether it's going to be Andy Barr or Daniel Cameron as the Republican nominee yet. Most of the polling shows Andy Barr, after getting the endorsement of President Trump, will likely end up being the candidate. On the Democratic side, Amy McGrath and Charles Booker are in for a tough primary fight as well, though Charles Booker has led in most of the early polling from Emerson College and public policy polling. So we're going to have to wait and see how it goes, but Charles Booker going into the election night seems to have a lead on that one. As for the general election, solid Republican across the board from all the rankings, even though the polls show it at a likely Republican margin for Barr versus Booker. As for the odds, it's listed at 92%, which is safe for the Republicans, so we can put Kentucky as safe for the Republicans there. Next, we're going to go to the state of Florida. Florida, this is the special election that's up in 2026. The Senate seat was held by Marco Rubio once he became Secretary of State for President Trump. Ashley Moody, the Florida Attorney General, was appointed U.S. Senator. She'll be the Republican nominee in this race. On the Democratic side, Alex Vindman is the leading Democratic candidate in this race, though Angie Nixon is also running. Alex Vindman will likely be the candidate. As for independents in this race, only Neil J. Gillespie is running. For the general election, 2 rankings have it solid Republican, 1 has it likely Republican, and 1 has it lean Republican. So it's kind of interesting, a little bit of a discrepancy there on how to rate this race. The most recent poll from Emerson has it a likely ranking. The most recent poll from Stetson University also has it as a likely ranking for Moody versus Nixon. For Vindman versus Moody, the Change Research poll that came out just a few days ago is a 2-point Democratic lead. Before that, it's mostly all likely Republican rankings in this one. On the Kalshi side of things, they have it listed at 82%. In the Republican odds, that would be a likely Republican win in the state of Florida. Next, we're going to go to the state of Georgia. Georgia, this is one of the top talked about Senate races on the 2026 map. This is the Democratic incumbent Jon Ossoff, and we're going to have to again wait and see how this primary ultimately shakes out the week after I'm talking about this video. It's going to be not this Tuesday, but the following Tuesday from the time I'm recording it. The 3 most notable candidates in this race are U.S. Representatives Mike Collins and Buddy Carter, and Governor Brian Kemp back candidate Derek Dooley. We'll have to wait and see how that all shakes out. It's looking like we're going to have to do a runoff between Mike Collins and Derek Dooley, is what the numbers are currently showing in the 2 most recent polls. But again, we'll have to wait and see how that all sorts out. As for the general election, it's listed as a toss-up from Inside Elections, but lean Democrat for Cook Politico and Sablo Crystal Ball, and likely Democrat for race to the White House. The polling averages for Ossoff versus Carter is a lean Democratic lead. For Ossoff versus Mike Collins is also a lean Democratic lead, and a likely Democratic lead for Ossoff versus Derek Dooley. As for the Kalshi odds, though, they're more bullish on this race than it being lean. They have it at 82%, which falls in the Democratic favor, which falls in the likely Democratic category. So the Kalshi odds, people are very confident in Georgia going to Jon Ossoff in this race. Next, we can go to the state of South Carolina. South Carolina, this is Republican U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. He is running for re-election, and he'll be the Republican candidate once again in all likelihood. On the Democratic side, there are a bunch of Democrat candidates running. Annie Andrews and Catherine Fleming Bruce are in this race. Probably going to be Annie Andrews in this race, but we'll have to wait and see how the primary shakes out. But Annie Andrews certainly has the money in this race thus far. As for the general election, it's either likely Republican or solid Republican, depending on the ranking. The only polls for Lindsey Graham versus Annie Andrews both fall within a likely Republican margin, though. As for the Kalshi rankings, it's listed at 83% for the Republicans, which would put the state into the likely Republican ranking. Next, we're going to go to the neighboring state of North Carolina. North Carolina, this is also one of the most talked about Senate races, like with Georgia. This is Republican U.S. Senator Tom Tillis, and the primary's already been settled. Tillis is not running again. The candidates are set. Republican former RNC Chair Michael Whatley is the Republican candidate, and former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper is the candidate for the Democrats. Now, the rankings on this one are actually very bullish for the Democrats thus far. 4 out of the 6 prediction sites have it listed in the Democratic favor, either lean or likely Democrat. Inside Elections and Sablo's Crystal Ball do have it listed as a toss-up. The polling thus far has looked very good for Roy Cooper. He's leading by an 8.4% lead, which is roughly a likely Democratic margin based on the rankings we use for the election prediction. So Cooper's off to a very strong lead as of now in this race. On the Kalshi side of things, he's also in a very strong position here, 85% a likely Democratic ranking, and that is a flip on the Senate map. So North Carolina goes as likely for the Democrats. Next, we can go above to the state of Virginia. Virginia, this is Democratic Senator. I do believe this is the Mark Warner race. Yes, it is. He'll be the Democratic candidate again. On the Republican side, there are 3 candidates in the race. Burt Mazusawa is going to be the Republican candidate. General election saw Democrat across the board. The polling matchups suggest that as well. In terms of the rankings, no surprise here, 96% safe for the Democrats. Virginia goes safe Democratic. Next, we can look at the state of West Virginia. West Virginia, this is Republican U.S. Senator Shelley Moore Capito. She'll be the Republican candidate again. Rachel Fetty Anderson will be the Democrat candidate. Solid Republican across the rankings for the predictions, and Kalshi odds have it as 93-1. No surprise here. West Virginia goes safe for the Republicans. Next, we're going to go to 2 Senate races that are getting talked about a ton in Ohio and Michigan. We're going to start with Ohio. This is Republican. This is another actually special Senate race I want to talk about. This is John Husted, the former lieutenant governor, I believe, of Ohio, who's appointed to fill the remainder of the term of J.D. Vance. He'll be taking on former Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown, who just lost his Senate seat in 2024, is running for this Senate seat in 2026, and is making it a very competitive race. Most of their rankings have it listed as toss-up. Inside Elections has it tilt Republican. Sadler's Crystal Ball has it as lean, but it's very, very close thus far. John Husted does have an early lead in the polls of a 3% lean margin in this race, but still a very close matchup in the state of Ohio. It is listed in the toss-up category on the Kalshi odds, but they actually disagree with the polls. They have the Democrat at 55% and the Republican at 45%. So based on those rankings, Ohio would actually go in the tilt Democratic category on the Senate map. Definitely different than what the map that we usually use for the predictions currently have. So that's interesting in the state of Ohio. Next, we can go to the state of Michigan. Michigan, this is also one of the most talked about Senate races that is up. This is Democratic Senator Gary Peters. He is not running again. There is a competitive primary underway between Abdul El Sayed, Mallory McMorrow, and Haley Stevens on the Democratic side. They have to fight it out to see the winning candidate, and the winning candidate will face off against a Republican nominee for Senate in 2024, Mike Rogers. Depending on the polling matchups, things differ. As for the predictions, all of them have it listed as a toss-up. Rogers versus Stevens across the margins here. Rogers is leading by 1.1%. For Abdul Sayed versus Rogers, Rogers is up by 3.7. McMorrow versus Rogers, Rogers is up by 1.9. So the Republican currently is leading in all three of the matchups, but by varying degrees, depending on which candidate it ends up being. As for the Kalshi odds in this race, they're more bullish on the Democrats' chances. They have it just inside the lean category at 74% odds for the Democrats, 25% for the Republicans. So they're banking on a lot of that undecided vote coming back for the Democrats by Election Day. This would put the state of Michigan into the lean Democratic category, putting the Democrats at 45 Senate seats. Next, we're going to finish off in the Northeast. We have the state of Delaware. Delaware, this is going to be a pretty reliably Democratic seat, not really too much of a surprise here. This is U.S. Senator Chris Coons. On the Democratic side and the Republican side, Michael Katz, the former Democratic state senator, will likely be the Republican nominee. After the general election, saw a Democrat across the rankings. The Kalshi odds agree, 94%. Delaware goes as safe Democratic. Next, we can go to the state of New Jersey. New Jersey is also going to be a very reliable Democratic state. This is U.S. Senator Cory Booker. He'll be the candidate once again. On the Republican side, 4 Republicans are running: Justin Murphy, Richard Tabor, Robert Lebovitz, and Alex Zan. In this race, general election side saw Democratic across the board. Kalshi odds agree at 90%. We could put New Jersey as solid for the Democrats. Now we're into New England. We're going to start with the state of Rhode Island. This one's also going to be a very reliable Democratic Senate race here. Not really much of a surprise. This is U.S. Senator Jack Reed, who'll be the candidate once again. Republican Raymond McKay will be the Republican candidate. Solid Democratic across the board, and the only poll from the University of New Hampshire from the middle of April shows Jack Reed leading by right around 20 points. Kalshi's odds has it listed as 92%. We can put Rhode Island, as expected, as safe for the Democrats. The state of Massachusetts, this is going to be an interesting one in terms of the Democratic primary underway here. The Democratic primary, Ed Markey versus Seth Moulton. The U.S. Senators, Ed Markey, challenging representative is Seth Moulton. We'll have to wait and see how that sorts out. Markey has a lead right now, but the most recent poll from Emerson College showed a much tighter race. Markey at 37, Moulton at 32, with still 29% undecided. As for the Republican side of things, John Deaton, the candidate from 2024 against Elizabeth Warren, will be the candidate once again. For the Republicans, it is listed as solid Democrat across the board, and the polling data thus far from University of New Hampshire, that same Rhode Island poll, shows it at roughly about a 20-point lead for the Democrats. So no surprise there. Kalshi odds also Massachusetts, 95-1. No shock here. Massachusetts goes as safe for the Democrats. We're going to end the video with 2 very competitive Senate races in New Hampshire and in Maine. We're going to start with the state of New Hampshire. Democratic incumbent Senator Jeanne Shaheen is retiring, so this will be an open race. The Democratic candidate is going to be U.S. Representative of the 1st District, Chris Pappas. He has his Democratic primary essentially on lock, leading by roughly over 50 points in the Democratic primary. On the Republican side, 2 former U.S. Senators are running, and John E. Sununu and Scott Brown. Similar on the Republican side, John Sununu has a whopping lead over Scott Brown right now at above 30 points, including the most recent poll, 73 to 27%. So definitely a large lead for Sununu in this one. Sununu versus Pappas seems to be the matchup for the general election. And it's a competitive one too. The predictions are pretty much in lockstep here, a lean Democrat or tilt Democrat in this race. Pappas versus Scott Brown is roughly about an 11-point lead on the Democratic side, but for Sununu versus Chris Pappas, it's only a 4.4% lead, falling in that lean Democratic category. So very close race underway in the state of New Hampshire. The Kalshi odds, however, though, are still more bullish on the Democrats' chances. 81% puts it in likely for the Democrats, so we can add New Hampshire to the likely Democratic margin. The final Senate race we have is the state of Maine, and what a Senate race to end it on. This is Republican U.S. Senator Susan Collins. She is going to be running again for another term, and she is facing off against the Democratic candidate Graham Plattner, who, with Janet Mills in the race, Plattner has really come out of nowhere and become the Democratic nominee essentially out of nowhere and really consolidated a ton of support in this Democratic primary, so much so that Janet Mills has withdrawn from the race. As for the general election, it's split. Tilt Republican from Inside Elections, toss-up from Cook Politico. The Economist has it lean Democrat, race the White House tilt Democrat. Sadler Crystal Ball has it as a toss-up. So a little bit of division there on the prediction side of things. On the polling, Graham Plattner's off to a very strong early lead, up 6.5%, a likely Democratic lead over Susan Collins, 41.6 to 48.1 as of today. On the Kalshi side of things, it's at 69% in favor of the Democrats. That puts it in the lean Democratic category. So the final state in the map, we could put Maine as lean for the Democrats. It puts the Democrats on the Senate map based on the current Kalshi odds at 51 Senate seats for the Democrats, 49 for the Republicans, with some very surprising and narrow flips in Alaska, Texas, Alaska and Florida, while there's also some Democratic flips in North Carolina and in Maine, though those are by more solid margins. This map is very interesting. It gives the Democrats the Senate control. I'd say the most surprising one on the map is probably Ohio. That's the only one that's, like, I would say vehemently disagreeable with, but it's a very interesting map. It's very interesting to see how it differs between the polls and the markets. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. Leave all those down below in the comment section. Do you agree with this map? Do you think it goes maybe too generous in the Democrats' direction? Do you think maybe it doesn't go far enough? Do you think Iowa or Texas or Nebraska could potentially flip? Leave all your thoughts down below. For now, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit like and subscribe, and hope to see you in another video.